everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're back on GT Sport and we're back with the FIA Pre-Season Manufacturers Championship. This is round 2, we're starting from P3. We totally misjudged our qualifying. I expected to get 2 runs in, but when I had pitted and went out after, what I did was I did an out lap and then another lap and then was going to pit and expected to get 2 laps in. And when I was on my first lap, I was just trying to set a base lap, I realised I was going to be about 8 to 9 seconds short and I wouldn't be able to get that second lap in, so I had to just literally on the last half of the lap just try and keep it consistent. It went over line, not a particularly great lap of a 1:56.9. I did have a lot more potential in that. I think I should have really been getting like a 56.45, something like that on an okay lap, but we still managed in P3 with that, which I was quite surprised about. It was pretty much a full lobby of A+ drivers. There was I think 3 or 4 A at the end of the lobby, so it was probably top split. I think it was the top split race. It had to be because some of the top drivers in the race were quite high ranked. I think they were over 70k on the driver rating. So this was the top split for the 9 PM race. Again, I couldn't get on before then, and I wouldn't have been advised to do the 8 PM race with my DR still working its way back up after we lost all that DR in one race. So fortunately we still managed to get P3 on that qualifying. It wasn't the best, like I say, but I was fairly confident going into this race that we could get a reasonably good result from this if we could just keep this car on the track. This Ferrari GR.3 is extremely hard to drive. It's probably the hardest GR.3 car on GT Sport that I've driven. I haven't driven a car as hard as this in terms of GR.3 cars. You have to be 100% concentration all the way. So we're going to get underway, and we've had to mix the cameras up a bit because again with the recording failed to record certain parts in the replay footage. I've tried re-recording it and I don't know if it's a bug within the replay or what, but it misses certain parts out every now and then, so we're going to just mix it about for a bit. As you can see there, we're going to go onto the TV replay cameras for the start of the race. As we're starting P3, the races all go and we're going to try and get in that slipstream. You can see how straight away in the slipstream we've got a really good start again, and we went down the right hand side because I could see it moving. I thought I'm just going to go for this, I've got a chance to get into P2. I go for the move and there's a little bit of contact there, luckily no penalty, and again we're slightly ahead on the track at this point. We go to turn in and he gives us a little nudge, and I really wasn't too happy about that, although I kind of don't think he had much choice. He had to take the line, but I nearly got pushed into the barriers. Luckily got away with it, and then going through these corners again we came so close here. Look how close I was to the rear of his car there, as again I skimmed the barriers on the left hand side as I really wanted to get into that P2. So let's go back and have a little look at that from the chase camera. Going into turn 1, I had the inside line. He turned in and actually touched me there where I had the right to have that line really, and again I got myself ahead there. I was nearly a full car's width ahead and I tried to give him space, but he gave me a little nudge, nearly pushed me onto them barriers. You see how much I had to lift to avoid them, and then going through these corners again he lifted mid corner, which was really strange there. He had a massive lift there and it nearly caught me out again, but luckily we got away with that with no penalties, and we're back racing. You can see they're still in P3, and I straight away at this point I thought that was the opportunity to make a move and get past him. There's not many opportunities at Nürburgring once people get in the rhythm, so I went into fuel saving mode, started saving fuel straight away because I was fairly confident with my speed at this track. I did manage to get a reasonable lap in the pre-practice like qualifying sessions you do when there's no fuel on that. It wasn't perfect, but we had a potential of about 55.0, 55.2, something like that, but we only managed to get 55.6 because it kept losing the rear on one part of the track. This car is a very tricky car to drive. It tries to kill you at any opportunity. Basically it wants to just end you at the slightest opportunity. You have to be really careful with the throttle inputs. You'll see how careful I'm being through the corners. I'm being very careful before I put max throttle on, and obviously using that fuel mixture too and saving fuel is actually helping a bit in terms of consistency, although the lap times were really slow. The guy in P1 in the Porsche must have hit quite a good lap for himself because his race pace doesn't seem to be that amazing. I mean, we'll have a little look at the situation when we go in the pits in terms of fuel management, but he must have been kind of out qualified where he should have been, and I think myself and P2 should have been a little bit further up in terms of our lap time. I think we failed to get the laps we needed. Maybe he got caught out with the timings as well in terms of how many laps he could get, and as you can see I went into fuel mixture 4. I was really trying to save fuel, so we're going to jump on board and look back at myself there. While saving fuel I was still able to get really close and attack him, so there was no real point in me putting one mixture on, because I felt like he was defending as well and using the fuel mixture. So he was probably doing a very similar thing as I was doing, as the Porsche just didn't have much speed at this early stage of the race, and it was really slow pace. So we were both just doing a lot of fuel saving, fuel mixture 4 and 5 and that, because as soon as I went to do one mixture, the guy in front of me could cover me, so there was no point in me wasting fuel. I had to try and judge this in terms of pit stop, because when the pace is so slow, you've just got to try and preserve the fuel for the pit stop to try and gain some places. So you can see there, the cars are very close at this stage of the race. Looking back, you can see a lot of cars still very close. We're just concentrating on trying to keep consistency. Like I said, we don't want to make any massive errors. We're in a solid position, to be honest, at this point in the race. You know, P3 is not a bad position, so I was reasonably happy. We were on for some reasonably good points at this stage, and I just need to concentrate and keep the car on the track without making any errors. As you can see again, what you can see in this view is how on the straights we're just saving the fuel, and through the corners we're saving the fuel. You can see how he's pulling away, but we're using the slipstream just to try and stay with him. I wasn't really worried about the guy behind me. He didn't seem to have the pace. He just wasn't really gaining on me anyway. And when I actually had a look in the at the pit stop phase, he actually used more fuel than us as well. So he really wasn't worrying me in terms of the speed that he had. So I felt pretty confident covering him at this stage anyway as well, because I was using 3, 4, 5 fuel mixture, and he wasn't really gaining on me, so I was fairly confident. As you can see there, we're going to move to the TV replay camera. As you can see, all 4 cars there fairly close together, all trying to get in the slipstream. I could see I was getting the slipstream, but again, I was too far back to really make a move, and it would have been a lunge, and you know, there was no point wasting the fuel to make a lunge and just cost time to myself and the car in front. So again, we're just saving fuel, trying to keep that the lines consistent. Again, through these corners, this Ferrari was so tricky. Any little bit of extra power you put into that Ferrari and the rear would start sliding. So yeah, I really have to be like gentle on the throttle to preserve them tyres as well. You know, this is a 12-lap race, although it's not particularly long, but you've got the tyre wear on time, or 6 or 7 or whatever it was, maybe more, I can't remember. So you've got to really be cautious of putting wheel spin into them tyres, which is going to take life out of them. So you can see again there, we're still in fuel mixture 2, we're riding on board again, and we're just trying to stay in the slipstream. You can see we're about 6 tenths behind P2. We're just concentrating on keeping it under a second. I wanted to make sure that he didn't pull away much more in the second, but I felt confident I could bring that back if I needed to anyway. As you can see, we're using fuel mixture 2, and through some corners we're going even higher. So I'm just trying to save as much fuel as I physically can for that pit stop phase. It was just such a slow race this in the early stage, because the guy in the lead just doesn't seem to have much pace at all. So he was really holding us up with his pace, and he just wasn't able to put some that fast lap times in. So we're at this point, I felt like the guy in front I knew would be saving fuel, because I know he's a fast driver. So the guy behind me, I wasn't so sure. I've only raced him once before at the Nürburgring on this track when we were in the GR.3 when we got our first win, and he made that comment about he should have won the race because without that spin, but we'll leave that. He makes a similar comment at the end of this video, but at the end of this race, but I just ignore him from now on pretty much, because I don't know what land he lives in. But you can see there, we're in P3 still, starting lap 4. We're just under a second away from the lead pack there. You can see the top 2 drivers. But again, I'm using the fuel mixture 1 once I want to get back closer, and then as soon as I feel I'm close enough, I'm just going back into fuel save mode. It's something I had to just keep on doing, and I was constantly working with the fuel management, just trying to keep it, you know, in check, making sure I was saving as much fuel as I can while trying to stay within that slipstream, just so I can reap the benefits from the slipstream. So you can see there, we're going to jump on board with the replay action again. It looks absolutely amazing again, this game at this time. They seem to be choosing these dust settings for these races, as they know a lot of people will probably be uploading the footage, and it does look amazing. So you can see there all the lights going on in the distance, still very close. This is what I'm saying about how slow the pace was. There was just so many cars that were able to stay close together because the pace just wasn't that fast. You can see there, I think we've got maybe 5, 6, 7 cars all fairly close there. You can see there, I think P1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 is all within 5 seconds of each other, because it's just such a slow pace. I think at this point the guy in P2 was actually starting to get a little bit impatient. You can see him starting to put some pressure on. Maybe he wanted to get past him and start utilising some speed, because I think like him, like myself, I was thinking this race is just so slow at this stage. I think the lap times were like late 57s or 58s, I think even. I don't even think it was into the 57s. It was just so slow pace that I felt like this stage I should have been hitting 56.9s and 56.8s and 57.1s and stuff like that. But I wanted to run the race like that really. If I would have got pole position, I would have definitely have gone for that attack mode and really put concentration laps in and gone for solid lap times, because that's how I drive better. And at this stage we just had to I just had to concentrate on saving the fuel. As you can see there, we got really close again. Look how close we are. We're jumping on board, looking back at ourselves, and you can see it's so close, the action, because of P1's just not got the pace at this point in the race. He seemed to be struggling a lot in that Porsche. I don't know why, because to be honest, the Porsche is probably the best car at this track. It's just so easy to drive and it's got a lot of grip. So I really think he out-qualified his race pace, and that's what's causing this real slow race at this stage. But you know, this happens in real life. You'll hear drivers saying, you know, the pace was a lot slower than we expected, or is a lot faster than we expected. It pretty much determines the lead driver, that determines the initial pace. And the annoying thing is, once this happens, because we're saving so much fuel at this stage, when we come to the pit stop stage, we kind of have to, I didn't want to get jumped by anyone, so you can't really overfill your car so that you can run aggressive to the end. I wanted to get past anyone that was slowing me down. So you know, you've got to think about that when going in the pits as well. So you know, the pace throughout the whole race just wasn't great, but like I say, not much you can do about it. You can see the Citroen behind us putting a bit of pressure on us, but again, I felt like I could cover him. It wasn't really any issues in any areas where he got close to an overtake. I think there was one slight issue where we had a little moment on the rear, but we managed to save it, and then I just put the fuel mixture to 1 and he just couldn't catch up. So we were just covering off whenever needed, as you can see there. Really close, and this stage we're coming close to the pit stop stage soon. I think we're coming to the end of lap 5. This is, I think we've got one more lap before we're going to go to the pit stop. We were obviously splitting it 50-50 in terms of pit stop, because the Ferrari is not great on its tyres, so I didn't want to take any extra life and any risks with this car in terms of, you know, losing control of the car. It's a hard car to drive, and you can see I really was getting that chicane spot on pretty much every time. Look how close we came to that barrier. I didn't realise how close I was getting to that until I watched back the replay, and we were pretty much nailing it every time, and I've really got the line sorted through there. As you can see again, we're going back into one mixture, try and get a little bit closer, because I know we're coming into the pit stop phase now, so I wanted to get a bit closer. But again, you can see I'm still saving that fuel, you know, putting into fuel mixture 3, going into the braking zone. I was able to gain so much time in the braking zones. They seem to be braking so early, and this is where I think the P2 was getting a bit impatient, because P1 was braking so early in certain areas, but it was just he couldn't really get close enough to make a move coming off the exit. So you know, with the grip the Porsche has out some of the corners, it's quite hard to get close to it in the braking zones, because it pours so well out of the corners. But you know, I think he was also saving fuel at this point. In fact, the driver in P2, to make sure that in the pits he could just breeze past P1 and get past, and then he could start putting some faster lap times in maybe on the last stint. Although we're going to really be struggling to do any sort of fast laps because of pace. You can see I think we've only used one mixture about 10% of the race, if that, at this point. You can see our best lap was only a 58.00. Our previous lap, lap 5, we made a little error on, but other than that it was a 58.2, 58.0, 58.0. And this lap's been, again, we're saving a lot of fuel with 4 attempts down. The tyres are starting to get a bit of wear at this stage now, so you know, we're trying to be a bit cautious. You can see if we use one mixture, we start gaining and gaining and gaining. You can see on the Delta it's getting closer and closer and closer. So I just want to keep that gap around this distance at this point. I didn't want to get too close, because they started getting really feisty. You could see they were getting very close together, as I had a massive moment coming off of that curb and just about saved it and didn't really lose too much time. As you can see, P2 looks like he's going to try and make a move. I think he decided to put it in one mixture, and this was a very important move that he's made here. Now going into pit stop phase like we did at Bathurst in the GR.4 race, getting ahead in the pit stop phase, and I really felt that the lead driver could have made that so much harder. He backed out of it when he had the inside line. You can see that people are so scared to do anything when it comes to contact. As you can see there, we go into the pits, and I think we managed to save the most fuel. You can see there, we saved just about the same as the guy who went in the lead, the car that was in front of us through the most of the race. He had saved 2% more than us, but the Porsche had really not saved much fuel, and the Citroen, as Citroen hasn't actually pitted at this stage, but I did go back and check, and he hadn't saved much fuel either. So you can see there now, I knew I'd pretty much come out ahead, so I slightly overfilled, only by a fraction, Not much at all. I just wanted to make sure that I got out ahead of that Porsche. It was really important because the Porsche was just not running great pace. So you can see there, we jumped the Porsche and put ourselves into a technically second place, but it's P4 because 2 cars haven't pitted yet. But we're second ahead of that Porsche, and that was really important. I had to jump that Porsche in the pits, and we managed to do that. So now we can start trying to put some better lap times in. We've still got to save some fuel, but I felt confident we could pull away from that Porsche, even though he was probably, because he had been running the race a little bit more aggressive than we was, he was probably going to have the fuel to run a higher mixture, but he just didn't seem to have much pace. So I felt like I could just now concentrate on trying to keep some consistency. So we're going to run on board now. We're going to pretty much run on board now for the rest of the race. The replay footage just kept missing sections out, and I really want to just stay on board for the last 5 or so laps as we try and get as close as we can now to the guy in front of us. As you can see there, the leader is the driver who was driving the Citroen, who decided not to pit pretty much last minute and do an extra lap. But we'll see if that's been a good choice or not, as I didn't think he would be able to jump us anyway, because I felt like even when we were saving fuel, he wasn't gaining. So I was pretty confident that he just didn't have the pace really. So you can see there we're 2.6 seconds behind the driver who's ahead of us, who's technically in the lead of this race. So he managed to get quite a big jump in that pits. He only had 2% more fuel when we went in the pits, so maybe he underfueled a little bit more to try and make sure that he could get out in front of the Porsche. You know, he probably didn't want to get jumped by myself or the Porsche, so maybe he underfueled a bit. As you can see, I felt okay because I'd put that little tiny bit of extra fuel in, so I could just try and use it, maybe just fuel mixture 1 and 2 pretty much to the end. As you can see now, we go over the line, and in the pits is the driver who was in the lead, and he's not come out in front of us. So we've jumped them guys, and we're into P2 in this race. So this is a really solid position. So what I wanted to do now at this stage was try and concentrate. I'm still doing fuel saving. You can see there we're still in fuel mixture 3 and saving fuel in fuel mixture 2 and 3 and just mixing it about, because we obviously did that in the first stint, so we need to make sure that we're doing that all the way through to the end of the race, because if we just went 1 all the way, mixture 1, we'd run out of fuel well before the end. So we've got to bear that in mind and just try and put some solid lap times. We've managed to drop the guy behind us, but he's now 1.6, 1.7 seconds behind us, so it looks like he's not going to really be able to challenge in terms of putting pressure on ourselves. So I was reasonably happy with that at this stage. I felt like I could just zone in on the guy in front, try and get some solid times together, put some solid pace, and just try and get the car home to the end in a good position. I felt like I could gain on this guy in front, because at this stage I'd realised he'd got quite a big advantage out of the pits, and I could see myself gaining at this phase of the race. So it was pretty obvious to me that he must have been having to do some fuel saving, because he had obviously underfueled in the pits and needed to do some drastic fuel saving to try and bring himself back in line to finish the race with the right amount of fuel. So you'll see me pushing reasonably hard, but obviously still doing the fuel saving. And this is what I'm saying about the pace being so slow in that first stint and affecting your whole race pace, because you can't go full aggressive all the way to the end, because if you did, you just wouldn't finish race, because it judges your fuel in the pits. And you know, I could have put the extra fuel in at the pits, maybe fueled up for an extra second or 2, but we wouldn't have jumped the Porsche, and we would have been stuck behind that Porsche. So it just shows you the difference that, you know, you've got to go for these strategies that overall aren't as fast in terms of your ultimate race pace, but they're faster than obviously the guy behind, and that was the important thing, to jump that guy behind in the pits. As you can see there, we go over the line straight away. Even with the fuel saving, we're at 4 seconds nearly faster than our first stint laps. So it just shows you the difference straight away now that we've obviously, you know, we've got slightly lower fuel obviously, but we're able to use a bit more of our pace. As the guy in front's able to use his pace, we're able to use 1 and 2 mixture a little bit more than obviously like 3, 4 and 5, etc. So at the moment it looks like we're on for a very good scoring round. You can see there we've managed to gain more on the P1 there. We're under 2 seconds now to him, and we're trying to put as much pressure on. I knew I had to just try and drive as consistently and as well as I could. I knew that this Ferrari could snap at any time and just lose the rear, so you have to be really cautious with it. You know, we're not driving with traction control, we're not driving with a counter steer assist, we're just using the ABS. As you can see there on screen, that's the only assist we're using with this. A lot of the other drivers were obviously using counter steer assist. The guy in front was using it, and the guy behind, and I think the guy behind that was using it as well. So, you know, it does come in handy in terms of helping you save the rear end of the car. But I prefer the feel of not using it. It just feels more alive, the car, and I enjoy. It keeps you a little bit more aware, to be brutally honest, because when you're using the other assist, you don't really need to worry about the rear end of the car snapping. Whereas like this now, you have to be so cautious of that the rear of the car just wanting to bite. And you can see there, we actually go through that section purple, 3 tenths up on our previous lap. So with this lap was looking like a 1:56 if I would keep it on, but you can see again, I go into fuel saving mode. I don't want to risk running out at the end. So again, go into the chicane, do it reasonably well, but I decided to stay in fuel mixture 2 now. I don't want to go into 1, even through this corner now. I'm not going to go into 1. I wasn't really worried about hitting like a 56.5 at this stage. What I wanted to do was just slowly gain on that lead driver and just slowly put the pressure on as we go over the line. 57.0, obviously not the best lap, but like I say, considering we're doing so much fuel saving still, it's not the worst thing to happen as we're going through to the turn 1, and you can see how much we've gained on him now. We've got 3 laps left and we're just over a second behind. We're not in the slipstream yet, but we're getting closer to it. You can see we're 1.3 seconds behind, but obviously we're still having to do that little bit of fuel saving. So what I wanted to do was do all the fuel saving in the corners, and then in the power zones try and use that 1 mixture to try and get a little bit closer if possible. So you can see there, into 1 mixture to try and gain a little bit more time on him as we go through the first sector. Again, pretty much identical to the previous lap. So just trying to keep the laps consistent, maintain. Obviously I don't want to spin the car or anything like that. I don't want to do anything stupid. We've pulled quite a bit of the lead out from P3 now. You can see the Porsche's dropped back 2.3 seconds behind, and I think he's actually starting to fall back even more now as he's having to do some fuel saving also, as he probably underfueled slightly in the pits. So you can see there, he's now 2.5 seconds behind. So we were dropping him, and it just shows you the difference in terms of pace in that first stint, how much he was slowing us up, because in 3 or 4 laps we've pulled out over 2 seconds from him. So, well, nearly 2.5 seconds from him. So I really would have liked to have been able to drive aggressive. You can see there, the Ferrari nearly caught me out there. Going over the curb, the rear started to step out, but luckily we managed to save it and to keep the car on the track. We lost a little bit of time to the guy in the lead. You can see we lost about 2-3 tenths, which was a bit frustrating. As you can see, our lap time's a little bit down now, but again, I still need to keep the fuel. Like I say, the fuel saving is so important in this now, because we're coming to the 2 laps to go. We've got 2.2 laps of fuel, and at this stage I thought now I can pretty much just use, you can see it's on 2.1, and if we go over the line with it on 2.1, I know that we've pretty much got the ability to run just 1 mixture and 2 mixture all the way to the end of the race now. So this is where we can just try and see if we can get closer. I was pretty sure that the guy ahead was going to have to do a little bit more fuel saving than what I was having to do, because obviously the way he gained so much in the pit stop, and he had about the same percentage of fuel as me when we went in the pits. I think he's driving the Lexus, which is a very good car in terms of its fuel saving. So in terms of its ability to save fuel even when driving, obviously with 1 mixture you can short shift it and stuff. So I was doing a really good job to be able to match his fuel saving in that first stint in this Ferrari, and I really do like driving this Ferrari. I have to say, it is a hard car, but the engine note and everything about it, it definitely has good handling if you're gentle with it. If you can be patient on the throttle, as you can see there, if you watch my throttle inputs, I'm really patient before I put that full throttle down, and if you can be like that with this car, it will reward you. I feel like the more I drive it, the more potential I'm going to find in this car. I'm obviously going to try and use it as much as possible in terms of daily races to try and get more and more used to it. I really need to try and get some solid results in these FIA races. You can see there, this is looking like another solid result as we're starting to get closer to the guy in front. We're 1.2 seconds again behind him. We've caught that 3 tenths that we lost back up to him. It's a shame that we lost that 3 tenths on that previous lap with that little moment on the rear, as we probably would be getting very close to his slipstream onto his back straight now. We probably would have been in the slipstream at this point now and gaining a little bit now. As you can see there, into 1 mixture, trying again to close as much of the gap up as I can. As you can see, we're both pushing as hard as we can with the fuel that we've got. You can see it in the way we're driving. You can see how we're both pretty much doing as much as possible without making too many errors. You can see again on that curb, the Ferrari wanted to try and snap out on me. I just about saved it. Didn't lose too much time to the leader, but again you can see the guy behind us has dropped behind now. He's over 3 seconds behind, so it really does show the difference in speed. compared to what the two top drivers here have, compared to the drivers behind. Obviously, that just was probably holding the whole pace. I think he actually, because of his pace in that first stint, it just slowed the whole race down. And now we've just got to try and put some lap times in and see if we can see if I can get close as possible to this guy in the lead. As you can see there, we're close to getting in the slipstream. Really, you can see the tight lines I'm trying to take. I'm trying to get into that slipstream as much as possible, just to reap some of the benefits of him off the car in front of me in the acceleration zones. As you can see, I'm just in it now. We're 9/10 off him, so now I can start trying to get closer and closer. As you can see now, we're starting to pull even more, and it's just such a shame that we couldn't get in that slipstream a little bit earlier due to the few errors. But you can see there, we're getting closer and closer and closer, and this was really intense. I have to say, you know, driving these FIA races with some of the best drivers on the game, it is really intense when you in these races. You're driving a car that could just snap on you at any time, but you need to push, and this is why I do like GT Sport. You know, you get races like this, and it's very similar to iRacing in that respect. It's really intense, and it feels like a proper esports race, and that's what I really like about the game. As you can see now, closing in again, you can see we're getting very close to slipstream. We're able to use that one mixture for this back straight, as I'd managed to save enough now to pretty much use one mixture to the end. As you can see now, I'm going to really just attack this chicane and see if we can get as close as possible. I don't think we've got a chance of getting past him now, but you never know. You need to put pressure on all the way to the end. As again, you can see how close I got to that barrier then on the right hand side, but I felt so confident on that part. We actually managed to get 6/10 behind him now, closing in, getting even closer, but we're going to go over the line and not much we can do. A solid result, and we end the race in P2. You go over the line, obviously saving a lot of fuel on that last stint still, so the lap times were not great, but we were in the 1 minute 57s. If we could have ran the race that I wanted to run, I think we would have been able to lap in the mid 56s to late 56s, and obviously low 57s more consistently, but we were not able to do that because of the pace of the first stint. But like I say, really happy with that result. We end the race in P2, and we come away with some really solid points. It's 2,298 points. The leader took 2,400 points, so it's a shame that we couldn't have got that position. But you know, 2,000 and basically 300 points is basically what we got, and that's a really solid result. So looking at the top table, we're now in P9 in the world rankings for Europe, which is really good. I'm really happy with that. You know, we've just got to keep the consistency and try and get some really solid results. We're P1 in the manufacturers also, so we're doing a very good job in this Ferrari, and I'm really happy with that. You know, some really good drivers driving this Ferrari, and we're sitting at the top of the table. So we just need to keep this consistency all the way through to the end. It's going to take our 4 best results, so we really need to keep getting these solid results and some good results, and hopefully we'll get a really good result soon. So anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. We're going to be back with more GT Sport very soon, along with other games like Project Cars 2 and Assetto Corsa in the future. Thanks again for watching everyone. Make sure you sub the channel if you haven't already subbed the channel, and click that notification button so you don't miss any future videos. Thanks again everyone.